The attack on Pearl Harbor was a surprise military attack by Japan on the United States naval base. It happened on December 7, 1941, just before 8 o'clock on Sunday morning. It resulted in a Japanese victory and the United States' formal entry into World War II. In the late 1930s, Japan had a strong sense of ultranationalism, which promoted its militaristic and expansionistic views. However, there was a lack of natural resources and a rapidly increasing population. Therefore, they decided to invade other surrounding countries. Japan, Nazi Germany, and Fascist Italy all believe they are racially superior and want to expand their territory by invading other countries, so they formed the Axis powers in World War II. Prior to World War II, Japan had invaded Korea and northern China, which had went well until they got stuck when the United States sent troops to defend China. To make things worse, the United States put an embargo on Japanese trade, which made Japan even more desperate for resources than ever before. 80% of their oil was imported from the United States. The US hoped that without access to money and goods, such as oil and other resources for war, Japan would stop its expansionism, but it only made them more determined to invade other countries. They then decided to focus their attacks on Southeast Asia to secure the resources there. However, Southeast Asia was heavily colonized by Great Britain and the United States. Britain's navy was less of a threat as they were fighting in Europe, but there was no way Japan could stand up against the US's navy. Therefore, if they could destroy the US ships at Pearl Harbor, Japan would have naval superiority over the Pacific Ocean. So on December 7, 1941, Pearl Harbor was attacked by 353 Japanese aircraft in 2 waves from 6 aircraft carriers. It was around 6,500 kilometers from the Japanese mainland, so the US did not think Japan would attack here. This left Pearl Harbor very undefended, and all of the battleships and aircraft were grouped closely together. To the Japanese, it was an irresistible target that they could easily attack. In the 8 hours following the attack on Pearl Harbor, Japan also successfully attacked British Singapore, Hong Kong, British Malaya, the Philippines, Guam, and Wake Island. It was a victory for Japan, as the United States suffered heavy losses and Japan's casualties were relatively few. This shocked and angered the American people, and public opinion turned in favor of joining the war after the attack. Throughout the rest of the war, the attack on Pearl Harbor was heavily used in American propaganda. The first wave was detected by the United States, but it was misidentified as a flight of bombers from the US, as it was expected at that time. The attack allowed the Japanese Empire to reach the peak of their victories in World War II. By 1942, they had rapidly swept through Guam, the Gilbert Islands, Wake Island, Hong Kong and the Philippines, Thailand, Malaya, Singapore, Indonesia, New Guinea, and the Solomons, and were now threatening North Australia and India. However, bringing the United States into the war was a huge blunder, and the tide would turn drastically against Japan over the next few years. The American people were unsure if they should have entered the war previously, but the attack on Pearl Harbor unified them into joining the war. The attack on Pearl Harbor was not as effective as what everyone thought it was. They did not attack the naval repair yards, fuel storage tanks or the submarine base, which would mean the US would recover easily and strike back fast. Lots of Japanese military strategists knew the overwhelmingly superior industrial might of the United States over the Japan's. One Japanese vice admiral had strong doubts about attacking Pearl Harbor, saying, "We can run wild for 6 months or maybe even a year, but after that I have utterly no confidence." Several historians have argued that the British knew about the attack on Pearl Harbor before it was conducted, and let it happen to force the US into joining the war on the Allies' side. However, this conspiracy theory was disregarded. Japan's victories were based on the success at Pearl Harbor, but that merely delayed their inevitable defeat from the US. When the United States had finally mobilized, Japan lost numerous decisive battles that they would never recover from. What followed after that was defeat after defeat of the Japanese forces, which eventually led to their surrender in 1945 after the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Overall, the attack on Pearl Harbor was a success for the Japanese, but they had provoked a war with the United States that they could never win.